about something really fun today. Okay, it is everybody's favorite thing to talk about, especially at church. It's money. Yeah? Everybody loves to talk about money, right? It's like your favorite thing. You also really love it when the pastor gets up and starts talking about money, right? Yes. No, this is often everybody's biggest fear about going to church. Are they going to ask me for money? Right? We do. And for most people, finances are one of the biggest things that keeps us up, worried, and tossing and turning. Am I going to have enough? Am I going to have enough to pay my bills this week? Am I going to have enough in my retirement? Am I going to make enough? Do I need to get a second job? How can I afford to send my kids to this camp that's like $1,600 a week? That's more than I make in a month, right? There are so many anxieties that money is often the root of. How am I going to have enough? And like we've been talking about with scarcity and abundance, and we're going to see as we move into November where we really take a deep dive into scarcity and abundance, when we feel as though something is scarce in our lives, we begin to hoard it. Right? Again, like last week, we talked about toilet paper. We somehow, as a people, American citizens, believed that toilet paper would be a scarcity. So we went out and bought it all up. Sometimes when we believe that money is going to be scarce in our lives, we just hoard it. We keep it for ourselves, or we sacrifice other things in our lives, like time with our family, time to recharge, time with God, so that we can have more. I often hear from people, Pastor, I'm really on board with trusting God when it comes to everything except my finances. How do I trust when it feels like I will not have enough? I'm good with trusting God with my life. I'm good with trusting God with my family's life. I'm good with trusting that God is going to lead me where I need to go. But for God to take care of my income and my expenses, I don't know about that. When I was in South Jersey, we offered a course called Financial Peace. It's Dave Ramsey, who's a Christian motivational speaker who focuses a lot in on how we do personal finance well. And one of the things that I learned from that I kind of knew in my brain but had never really seen it laid out, is that 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Right? 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's kind of overwhelming, right? And then we wonder why we have all of this debt, right? Because Americans, too, carry the most amount of debt, not just in our government, but also in our own lives, right? Because we get these plastic fancy things called credit cards. And when I got my very first credit card, right, I didn't really totally understand what the concept of a credit card was. So in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's just free money. Right, I'll have to pay it back eventually, but I don't have to do it anytime soon, so it's fine. Luckily, my credit card had a very small spending limit. But then I remembered, as I got my first credit card bill, that there's also interest, right? And so now you're not just paying back what you put on your credit card, you're putting even more that you owe to somebody else. And sometimes, and we see it happen all of the time, there are multiple credit cards. And you're trying to figure out which credit card has what. And do I use this credit card to pay this bill and then use that credit card to pay that bill? And all of a sudden we live anxiously and concerned, so that when your pastor gets up and starts talking about how it's really important that we give back to God, we go, how? I don't even feel like I can pay my bills this month. How in the world am I supposed to give something back to God? I understand that giving to the church is important and I want to be there, but financially, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So, we get up every Sunday, every year as pastors, and eventually at some point during the year, we have to talk about pledging, right? And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about pledging today. That's coming in a couple of weeks, but it is a thing, right? And we say, tell me what you're going to give to the church this coming year. And we say, you should be giving 10% of your income. And that number is terrifying, right? When you think about it, you go, no, how about like less than? How about I just not do 10, because 10 is a big, big number. And I don't like to see that. And how am I going to live without that 10%? That's my Starbucks. That's my shopping thing. That's my Christmas tree shop adventures. That's my IKEA shopping. That's my new handbag, right? That 10%, or that's my grocery bill for this month. How am I going to survive without that 10%? And so when I was first, I'm going to confess here, when I was first a pastor and I was first appointed and I was like really, had just graduated from college, was a full-time seminary student, I was not flush with cash, and I didn't really understand the importance. I too lived out of a place of fear, and so I didn't tithe. And I said to myself, well, I give a lot back to my church, right? I give to other charities and I buy lots of stuff for the church and I don't ask for reimbursement and this should equate, right? Well, it didn't quite work like that, and I felt like at the end of every month I was still struggling to figure out how to make it all work. When I was in my third appointment, so it took me a really long time to understand this concept of tithing, even though I'm the one who gets up here every year and talks about tithing. It took until my third appointment when I said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see how this goes. And so I calculated out what 10% of my income was going to be. And I looked at the number that I was going to be giving monthly, and I panicked a little bit because that was a lot of textbooks. It was a lot of Starbucks trips. It was a lot of other things that I felt I could be doing more fun things with my money, right? Let's be honest. And I said, I'm going to do it. And I set up, in my third appointment, electronic fund transfers, which is kind of what we do with Vanco, where the church just had a program that went to my bank account and removed that money every month, so I didn't have to think about it because I am the worst check writer in the whole wide world. Okay, I am terrible at it. And I was terrified for about the first 6 months that I was going to miss that money, or I was going to feel like I was missing out on something. But I will tell you, and I don't say this just because I am your pastor and I have to say these things, ever since I started giving regularly and giving 10%, I have been more financially secure than I ever have been before. The conversation that God and I had was, I am not that far out of school. I make minimum salary. I still have a lot of student loan debt that I'm paying back. I have other bills and other expenses I have pets. I have a family. I said, God, if I am going to do this, you have to figure out how to make it work. because I have no personal finance background. I never took one of those classes in high school. I didn't know how to write a check till I was a senior in college, which is really embarrassing, really embarrassing. Right? I didn't know how to set a budget or how to do any sort of personal financing. Fun fact about clergy, in case you did not know this, we are considered self-employed, which means we pay both sides of the tax, right? I didn't know that when I started in ministry, and my churches did not take my taxes out. So I just ran around going, this is great. And then April would come and I would be like, no, this is not great. It took me a really long time to figure out how to faithfully look at what I can do and what I can't do. And the beauty is that when I was living in a place of scarcity, of trying to make ends meet and figure it out, and I wasn't being as generous as I really thought I was, I got to a place where I was able to breathe, and I have the ability to be more generous now than I was before. What we hear in the gospel reading today and in 1 Kings is that the desire to collect and collect and collect is not going to get us anywhere. Right? The parable that Jesus tells his followers of the farmer who says, I need to make sure that I have enough food so that I can enjoy my life. So he stores everything up, and his barns are not big enough, so he tears them down and he builds even bigger barns. And when that project is complete, God says to him, it's over. And what are you going to do with all of this stuff that you have stored up here? Whose is this going to be? What have you done with your life? And then we hear the story of Elijah. And Elijah has to rely fully on God for like everything, because prophets don't get paid. Okay, there's no steady paycheck that comes in. They're not even like freelancers. There's just nothing. You have to expect that somebody else is going to take care of you. And God says to Elijah as he is fleeing from King Ahab and Jezebel and all the people that want to kill him, go to the wadi. I will take care of you. And Elijah does. And God takes care of him. The ravens feed him, right? They bring him meat and bread in the morning and at night. And when the wadi dries up, because there is a drought in the land, which means that everybody is hurting. When there is a drought, especially in ancient Israel, there are no grocery stores. There's no importing, exporting food. If there is a drought in the area that you live, like the widow says about her son, you are basically preparing yourselves to die. And so Elijah goes into the town, and the widow is there, and she says to him when he asks her to bring him something to eat, I am going to go home. I'm going to use the last little bit of my flour and the last little bit of oil, all that I have, and I am walking with my son, knowing that there's no emergency shopping, there is no emergency storehouse. We have done all we can, and this will be the end. And Elijah says to her, if you trust in God and if you trust in me, God promises that your meal will not run out and your oil will not run out until the rains come, aka until there is abundance in the land again. And imagine if you are the widow, right? And if you've ever lived in a place of scarcity before, where you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, where you are so worried about how you're going to pay for that next thing, if somebody comes and asks you for the very thing you know you need, you're not going to want to give it to them, right? If you know that this is your last box of pasta, right? Let's just be Italian here for a second. This is your very last box of pasta, and this is all you have. and you are pretty sure you are never going to be able to get another box of pasta, and somebody comes to you and says, please, would you share with me? Our natural human instinct is self-preservation. And so we want to say, no, this is mine. This is all I have to take care of my family, and if I give it to you, there won't be enough for the rest of us. So the widow could have said absolutely not, but instead she takes a little bit of the last of what she has to be generous and offer it to somebody else. And what happens? She is provided for until the end of the period of scarcity. So her and her son, who were facing, I have to tell you, certain death. Like I always laugh in the First Kings readings when the widow says, I'm going to go home, I'm going to make a cake for my son and I, and then we are going to die. Right? It seems very extreme and sort of funny if you have a warped sense of humor like I do, but that's literally what they were facing. That is the reality of the world in which they lived, that this would be their last meal. And so you have a woman who is facing sure and certain death, who has resolved herself to the fact that her and her son are done, who is generous when she does not need to be generous, and generous when many people would say she cannot afford to be generous. And her entire life is saved. Because the generosity that she offered to another person money is in and of itself not evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. Right? I want you to think about some of the things that you know about people in this world. Let's just use a really great example. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, right? How many of you use Amazon? Yeah, I get like Amazon packages all the time. Because especially during this pandemic, I was like, I don't want to have to go to the store. I'll just Amazon it here. That man, one man, has so much money that if he gave every single one of his employees something like $10,000, he would still have as much money as he did in January. Billions of dollars. What are you going to do with billions of dollars? Right? What is it that we are hoarding and collecting things for? Why do we feel this need as a culture to have all of this money? And some of it's not even cash money, right? Some of it's in stock, some of it's in property, some of it's, right? That's my dad's favorite thing to tell me is that Jeff Bezos doesn't actually have all of that money because it's not like it's sitting in his bank account. It's just what he's worth. Still, you're worth billions of dollars, right? What are you going to do with $1 billion? Life is not about collecting so that you can have it, so that you can say, look at what I've done. Because at the end of the day, the things that we do for ourselves don't get us anywhere. It's like there's a show on Netflix, and the mother is very rich, and she has a really rotten child, and she dies. And all of her money is left, she has a monkey. All of her money is left to her monkey. She has like millions of dollars that is left to the care of her monkey, Petunia. Why? What are you going to do with it? What does it matter? What does it all accumulate into? What does it look like for all of us to step out on faith and say, I know God will provide me with what I need? Right? What I want is very different than what I need. right? Because we all want 17 cars or houses or Louis Vuitton or Kate Spade bags, right? There's all something that we want. But if we trust that God will give us what we need, no matter what, if we trust that when we honor God in the way that we live our lives, and we trust that even when it feels like we don't have enough, that God will make sure we have what we need, imagine how more abundant our lives shall be. So that the panic about whether or not you're going to have enough at the end of the year or the end of the week or the end of the month turns into, how have I blessed people? How has my community become more enriched because I am here? Not how much more stuff have I accumulated, not how much more panic and anxiety have I grown, but how do I live within my means and trust that God will provide? And then those of you who maybe have had great success in your life and you are well taken care of, and that excess is there, what does it look like for you to bless other people with that excess? What does it look like for you to live in a place of not storing up for yourself in this lifetime, but blessing others as you go out? And what does it look like for us as a community of people to believe in what we are giving to? Right? What does it look like for us to believe in the work that we are doing as a church? To inspire other people to come alongside of us and use the gifts that God has given them to transform the world? What does it look like for us to live in a place in which our basic needs are provided for? And the stuff that we would collect, the larger barns that we would build, instead go to change the world, that all might have what they need. Because in 2020, in this dumpster fire of a year, there are still millions of people who go to bed every night hungry. There are still, as we are hoarding our toilet paper and our stuff, there are people who are like the widow and her son. This meal I have is all I have. What does it look like for us to join together and feed people, clothe people? Right? How many of you have stuff in your closet that you have not worn in years? Or maybe, if you are like my sister, still has the tags on it. Or that thing that you bought because you were like, I'm gonna wear that one day. And so every time you look at it, you just feel shame because you don't. What does it look like instead for us to say, I am beautiful and wonderful the way that I am, and there is no changing this, but that could go and bless somebody else? What does it look like for us to start trusting that God will provide for our every need today and every day? Amen.